Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everybody. We are from the third grade. We would like to present about the setting. Before that, we would like to introduce ourselves with me, Orma, my friends Elisa Hardianti, Lailatul Masroroh, Nadia Fakhrulisa Al-Mumtaza, Ardi Nur Setyo Putro, and Rosnafa Rahmatillah. Before the presentation, I would like to tell you that we would like to present about the definition and example of settings, setting purpose, why settings important, how to decide story setting, how to research settings, how to write setting, and how to write fictional settings. First, definition of setting. Setting is of the story is the context in a sense of story that describes the elements in which the story is taking place, including time, place, and environment. Jadi setting itu merupakan konteks scenes dalam cerita yang menggambarkan tentang di mana cerita itu terjadi, kapan waktunya, dan bagaimana suasana pada story atau cerita tersebut. Many mistakenly believe it's only the backdrop to the story when in fact it includes everything that has to do with the social environment, place, and time. Jadi ada banyak kesalahan dalam mengartikan setting, bahwasanya setting itu tidak hanya mencangkup kapan dan di mana story itu atau cerita itu terjadi, namun juga include social environment, place, dan time. For the example of settings, we could take the story about Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet is set in Verona, Italy. Jadi place of the story Romeo and Juliet is in Italy, tempatnya itu ada di Italy, and the environment social, we could now from the prologue place out details regarding on going forth between two prominent families in the town. Jadi kita tahu bagaimana kondisi sosial pada cerita Romeo and Juliet, yaitu menjabarkan detail tentang perseteruan yang berlangsung antara kedua keluarga terkemuka di kota. And the prologue, two households both alike in dignity. Jadi prolognya itu ada dua rumah atau dua keluarga yang keduanya itu mempunyai martabat yang sama, yaitu keluarga Romeo dan keluarga Juliet. And the end where we lay our scenes atau the scenes of the Romeo and Juliet from a scene great break to new humanity. Jadi where dimana author meletakkan adegan Romeo dan Juliet dari dendam kuno yang terjadi atas pemberontakan. Okay, for the next explanation, we will continue by my friends.
Well, I would like to continue the presentation. So in this slide, we will talk about setting story's purpose. So in short, the setting of a story has an important purpose in providing the reader with context on the narrative, such as describing the when and where the setting. Nah, jadi di sini latar itu memiliki tujuan penting dalam dalam memberikan pembaca itu konteks pada narasi. Nah, seperti yang kita tahu bahwa latar itu memiliki jenis seperti latar waktu, latar tempat, dan lain sebagainya. Nah, maka di sini setting atau latar itu menggambarkan kapan dan di mana latar atau tempat dari sebuah cerita itu sendiri. Kemudian purpose dari setting ini sendiri menjawab pertanyaan dari seperti where does it take place, what's the social climate, what time period is it, what important events are happening in the world, and what are social norms and expectations. Bahkan setting atau latar ini bertujuan untuk mengetahui sebuah weather and season also, and etc. And also, the setting in any realm of literature can help set the mood or tone, place a story in context of the surroundings, provide foreshadowing, or add sense of irony. Nah, jadi dalam bentuk sastranya sendiri itu dapat membantu mengatur suasana hati dan nada atau dinamika dalam sebuah cerita, khususnya latar itu sendiri. Kemudian menempatkan cerita dalam konteks lingkungan sekitar, lalu memberikan bayangan atau menambah rasa ironi. Nah, rasa ironi itu apa? Rasa ironi adalah situasi yang timbul dalam cerita atau drama itu sendiri. Jadi dapat kita simpulkan bahwa maksud dari adanya setting dalam sebuah cerita itu untuk menentukan waktu dan tempat dalam sebuah cerita itu sendiri. Well, I think it is enough for me, and for the next presentation will be delivered by the next presenter of our team. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In here I will be telling you about why setting is important. Because it's a provide the readers with a context of the time, place, and environment that story takes place in. It is also important because it improves the reader's experience and adds the story development with a plot, modes, and characters. You are learning how to write a non-fiction book or write a novel or fiction story. The setting of a story is crucial that story development and the reader's experience for a number of other reasons. In here there is 5 components why setting is important. Number 1, connect the story element. An effective story setting connects the character to the plot and ties together the story themes events. Number 2, building meaning the narrative. Without the setting of the story there may not be as much meaning to be grand science setting per content. Number 3, directive emotion response is the reader. When the reader are in your story setting, they will be reading and infected in experiencing the narrative and how it will unfold. Number 4, help the reader visualize your story. Authors use story setting to describe the environment, times, and place for the readers, which provides more content and engages the readers. Number 5, the last, improve the story flow with effective will create meaning in your narrative. The plots will flow together well and even will feel real.
Okay, we're going to talk about decide the setting story. There is 3 important points how to decide the setting story. The first one is make your story setting fit the purpose of your plot. Your story setting should be aligned to your plot so that it all makes sense to your reader and it is realistic. Are you trying for a murder mystery? To fit the purpose, Make the story setting be in Chicago. Why? Because there is a high crime rates, many places to hide, and a resourceful police situation. Do you want it to feel fast-paced or like a slow and steady Sherlock Holmes mystery? To accomplish that, a rural backwoods setting will be more appropriate. See how the setting of a story should make sense for the overall plot. The second one point, make the setting fit the story. The setting of story should fit the actually story. Things, event, or object within a story setting should not feel out of place to the reader based on prior knowledge of a place or time period. For example, does the folk wagon on the bumpy road carry a car full of lawbreakers? They will probably not want to draw attention. Place them in America in an era when old folk wagons were common. Point number 3 is make the setting of story fit your character. Last but not least, the setting of a story should always be aligned with the main character found within that story. For example, is your character shy and withdrawn? Have her sitting on the ledge surrounding the red brick school building, writing short story in her mom's old notebook instead of enjoying recess with the other kids. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is how to research the setting. When you are researching the setting a story, there are many things to consider. First is to research the setting a story. You you can use this question. You can use these guiding questions like what nationalities are represented in the population, how dense is the population, and then you can see here, and then this, what are the typical weather patterns for that time of year, and then what is the history of the area. All of these guidance question that can help you to research the setting. Okay, the next is how to research the setting of a story. Here are some sources for researching the setting of the story. The first, you can use the source visiting the place in person. This is the best way to get a real life, hands-on feel for a setting, but it's not always possible, especially if you don't have a budget or if you are writing about an imaginary place. And the second source, you can use YouTube. You can do a quick search on YouTube to find footage of many sites. Jadi YouTube ini kalian dapat melakukan pencarian cepat menggunakan YouTube untuk menemukan cuplikan dari berbagai atau banyak website gitu. And then Google Earth. This is great resource and one that will give you an idea of the terrain and general appearance of a place. And then next one is encyclopedias. Don't forget to use a hand encyclopedia. And then the next source is National Geographic. It's great research for high quality images. And then the next is newspaper. While more time consuming than doing a quick online search, they are first hand research. Jadi meskipun lebih memakan waktu daripada melakukan pencarian online cepat,
mereka adalah penelitian menggunakan penelitian tangan pertama. Kemudian, and the next is photos. Do a Google for photos of what you are searching for. And then the next source is archives. First-hand research where you are sure to find a wealth of information on your topic. Nah, jadi arsip ini yaitu penelitian di mana kamu itu akan menemukan banyak informasi tentang topik-topik itu.
Alright guys, so next let's moving on to the next point of this chapter. It's about how to write setting itself. The first thing that we have to do is we have to choose our setting wisely. Let's talk about setting suitability. As the examples above clearly demonstrate, every great story hangs on setting. So before we start writing our story, make sure that setting fits like a glove. For some authors, this will be easy, but for others, especially for those who are doing a bit of world building for a sci-fi or fantasy novel, choosing the setting may be a little bit trickier. So, to set we non-put intended on the right path, here are a few important questions that we have to consider. First, exactly where and when will our story take place? Take this time to nail down the details. If it's contemporary, does that mean present day or 10 years ago? And if it's in a certain country, what city or town? And if you have multiple settings, how long will the characters spend in each one? The next, is the setting a real place? And if so, how much research will it require to convey in a good faith? If it's merely based on a real place, how much overlap will there be? And the last is, how will the setting of the story factor into the characters' lives? Will it help them or prevent them from achieving their goals? If neither, why choose that setting at all? And once we've answered this to our satisfaction, we can settle on our setting, as it were, and begin to constructing it in more detail. And next point is focus on what's unique. Not every element of our setting will be worth noting, so focus on what's unique. Every city has buildings and sidewalks, but how are they different from every other cities? If someone leans their head out of the window, what do they hear besides traffic or birds? Does the town square smell like a bread from the local bakery or like pollution from a nearby factory? And the next point, we have to get the details straight. Again, we have to think our story setting almost as another character, just as we might fill out of character profile to flesh out their quirks. We can profile our setting too. Here are some setting profile questions to get we started. First, what's the history of this area? Second, what is the weather like each season? What are the biggest landmarks of the setting? And next, in what sort of residence do most people live? After that, how do people tend to get around, walking, driving, etc.? And why do people like or dislike living or visiting here? So, yeah. The next point, the third point is use all 5 senses in descriptions. As we describe each setting of our story, make sure that we don't just talk about how it looks. Instead, use all 5 senses. Begin from sight, sound, smell, touch, or even the taste. We shouldn't use all of this in every description, nor should you continuously rehash settings we have already described. But as a rule of thumb, each time our characters visit a new location or experience that location in a new context, we have to devote a paragraph to setting and the scenes. And fourth, we have to develop our characters' relationships to the setting. Once we have established the characters in our story, we can dig into relationships with the setting. These relationships can take many forms. Say your main character has lived in the same town their entire life. They might have a long-time fondness for it, or they could resent and feel trapped by the setting. Whatever you decide, make sure that this nuance comes through in your narration. And the last point that we have to consider is we have to keep our readers oriented. The final cardinal rule of story setting is keep our readers oriented. We don't want people to get distracted from our plot because they are too busy trying to untangle where the action is happening, right? Okay, so that's all about how to write setting. Let's move on to the next point.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Now I will continue my friend's explanation. It's about how to write a fictional setting. The first ways is develop the setting fully before you begin writing. Develop the setting before start writing. Make sure that your setting is fully developed before you start writing. Why? Because it will help you to save your time. Take notes of your idea on notebook or paper. Jadi yang pertama yang perlu dilakukan sebelum menulis sebuah latar dari sebuah cerita fiksi adalah yang pertama mengembangkan dulu latar yang kalian punya atau penulis punya. Kenapa demikian? Karena jika kalian belum sempurna mengembangkan latar atau setting dari ide yang kalian punya, itu akan sangat menghabiskan waktu ke belakangnya. Tentu kalian atau penulis tidak ingin menghabiskan waktu di belakang. Lebih baik kita memikirkan secara matang dulu latarnya, baru mulai untuk menulis seperti itu. And the second is create your world first. Why the second way is important? Because everyone can get or can create their own world, and no one can tell that they is doing wrong. But as a writer, we need to explain the setting very detailed. Jadi kenapa kita harus menciptakan cerita kita terlebih dahulu? Karena memberikan pemahaman pada pembaca itu penting dan itu menjadi sebuah keharusan. Jadi penulis perlu menceritakan settingnya secara detail agar pembaca itu bisa membayangkan gitu seperti apa cerita atau setting dari cerita yang dituliskan. And then number 3 is create your setting second. You need to create every aspect of your story setting before you move on to writing your book. Pada bagian ini, I say in bahasa, so you can understand my explanation clearly. Jadi kenapa disebutkan di sini your setting second? After you create your world first. It is because pembaca itu butuh dijelaskan bagaimana cerita itu terjadi. Jadi kalau bisa sebagai as a writer, we need to develop, we need to think outside all the writer thinks like that. Okay, think outside the box when it comes to creating a setting of a story for a fictional world. Seperti itu, seperti biar punya ciri khas. Okay, and number 4, you need enough details to make the world believable. Because it is a fiction, you need to make a detail so the reader can understand and the story can be believable by the readers. It's correct that the writer, you indeed want us to use our imagination, but it's your job to guide it. It's the writer's job to guide the readers how the readers can feel the setting clearly in the details. And the last is draw a map. Map out the distance between places. With drawing a map, it is not only will drawing a map of your world help you create the story setting, but also it will help both you and the reader envision little nuances to make it more realistic. I think that's all the explanation from our group. I hope you all learning something useful, and thank you for your nice explanation. The last I say, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.